Hello and welcome to an episode of the Monster Report. My name is Nick Adam Poling, your host, and it's been a while since we've had some of these discussion episodes over Godzilla and other kaiju discussion monster films that we have out there, so we're going to get back to this. I was actually kind of looking back at the logs, and it looks like it's been about 2 years since I had Kyle Yunt on, and we were talking Godzilla 1985-84, and that was a real fun episode to have with him, so we're going to get back to this, and we are going to be discussing the next in the series, which is Godzilla vs. Biollante, 1989, and I have with me, joined on this episode, Chris Canale and George Taylor. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, great to be here.
Yeah, and it is pronounced Canale, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is pronounced George, right? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So glad you guys are here, and of course we've met at G-Fest and had a lot of cool discussions over some things that were happening there, of course. And what G-Fest is going to be interesting this next summer is because we have a confirmation of Megumi Odaka, who played Miki Sagusa in the Heisei series, and this was her first film, kicking that off. And so talking about Godzilla vs. Biollante in this episode, we'll start with you, George, if you don't mind. Kind of tell me maybe some of your first reactions when you first saw this film. What'd you think of it?
I enjoyed the movie. I didn't quite know what to make of it because it was very different from everything I grew up on, because I had seen all the Showa Godzilla films to that point. Godzilla 85 was a big movie for me, and I didn't know that there were other Godzilla films being made in Japan at the time.
That's right.
And I remember, I'm trying to think of what magazine it was in. I don't know if it was Fangoria, but I randomly saw, thinking back now, probably what may have been the video cover of Godzilla vs. Biollante in a magazine. And I didn't know what it was, but I saw it and I knew what Godzilla was. So I saw it and I'm like, what's that thing he's fighting? And I'm like, what is that? And I don't know if the article even talked about it. I just mentioned Godzilla. I'm like, what is that? Saw it, thought about it. This is back before Google and the internet, so I was going to go Google, I'll go figure out what that is. So just kind of forgot about it, and randomly was at a Comic-Con in New York in, I'm going to say probably 91, 92, and randomly went by a table and happened to see a video of the film. Not that I suggest everybody go out and do that.
Yeah.
But happened to see this thing, I'm like, oh, that picture again, and grabbed it, took it home, and watched it, and was just blown away that there was this Godzilla film that had been made that I had no idea was out there. Loved the deep roars from 54 and 84, so it was cool to have that. I liked Biollante being a large monster. I thought it was kind of strange he was fighting a plant. I'm like, well, what kind of fight did this thing put up? But by the end of the film, when we see the transformation Biollante turns into, like, oh, okay, that's a little better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I enjoyed it.
I was going to ask you. You said it was a VHS tape, I'm guessing, at that Comic-Con, right, George?
Yes.
Okay. Was it a bootleg or was it the official release?
It was a bootleg, and I didn't know this until years later. It was a cut-down version of the film, because there was a bootleg going around. The original version is 105 minutes. The version I saw was like 89 or 90 minutes. It literally was missing like 15 or 20 minutes of footage, and really weird juxtaposed editing. When I go back and looked at it like 15, 20 years ago, I was like, wow, this is just weird. All the stuff that they edited together and strange. I don't know how it got cut and put together like that, but it was a bootleg video that was only like 90 minutes long.
Wow, it's almost like that, the story of the Terror Mechagodzilla releases that were just chopped without any regard for story. So kind of that's what you, when you watch that cut of it, it's like, wow, that's missing some crucial stuff, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of follow up with something you said there in a minute, George. But Chris, first reactions to the film.
I was spoiled growing up. George was the one that got me into this genre, and I never had to really hunt for these movies like he had to. He was really my source of how to get into this genre. And I was introduced to it through a bootleg, probably made from a copy of his legit copy that he got. I was really taken back by it because it's a mix between a monster movie. You have some psychic action going on between Mickey and Godzilla at one point, and JS Defense Force I thought was really interesting. Mm-hmm. They actually kind of started to hold their own for a while in the movie before they unfortunately get beaten again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised actually. I didn't know that it's George that got you kind of into this. So it's all George's fault. So wow, I'm glad.
Yeah, it's his fault.
It's interesting that I've got you both on this episode. That's awesome. That I have cause and effect here. That's that's neat to hear that, and to say that. Yeah, this one really stands out as kind of an odd bird is an understatement, because probably in a lot of ways like George, when you said you were discovering there were other films made beyond 84. Here in the States, we got the home video release of 85, Godzilla 85, and it ended with such this abruptness of wow, that Raymond Burr, speech at the end that he has, that's like, I want another film. I want Godzilla to come back. The Return of Godzilla Part 2, if you will. And in a lot of ways, for some of us, that was kind of it. And until we discovered that they were making films, starting in 89, of course, with this film. And when I saw the VHS release finally, and they had those scenes from Godzilla 85 in there, and it showed that this is trying to establish that this is a direct sequel to that film, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm really, just taken back by the fact that there is more to that story, and so I was glad to see that Godzilla kept going on. That wasn't a death scene at the end of Godzilla 85. He was just taking a nap, right?
Yes.
And so, and you talked about the deep roars. I really, like the 84 roar. It's one of my favorites, of course, and I like how they did use a lot of different things. How about the suit? Let's start with you, Chris. Kind of your reactions to the redesign of the suit.
I actually like it. It brings back a lot of nostalgia to the original Godzilla. It comes back as more of an intimidating monster versus more of a superhero. And it really establishes in this movie the double line of teeth that's going to be carried on to the rest of the Heisei series. I missed the fangs that was in 84.
Right.
But I do like the double added rows of teeth, which is a nice little touch to this suit.
Very cool. Yeah. George?
Yes, this suit, Biogoji, I think is it's called, and then King Ghidorah Goji for 91. We're not going to go into the King Ghidorah movie, but those two, and I think the suit is the same, except for they may have modified the head for King Ghidorah. That's my favorite suit. I love the look of Godzilla. I like the thunderous footfalls as he's walking around, which I think they got to the best of in King Ghidorah. Not that I'm going to keep referencing Ghidorah all night, but those two are my picks. I love the way Godzilla's represented in those two.
Yeah.
I actually really do like him in Godzilla 84 also. I shouldn't knock Godzilla 84 out of that. So those three in a row for me are really great. It just kept getting better and better for me over those three movies.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to be the guy who disagrees, but I'm just saying, as far as the favorite suits, of course, I feel like with this one, it's for me personally, I do understand why people do appreciate this suit, but I for me, the cheekbones are something that I have trouble getting over with, and I know I'm going to probably get some comments over that one, but when he's looking at you kind of with that face, and I know people are just going to defend it and say, that's what's cool about it. They really like that bear kind of look almost to his face, almost more animalistic, and I do appreciate that, and that's why I'm treading lightly on this subject. It's like I said, it's just on the maybe lower end of the suit redesign, because of course I just watched the 84 film so much that was always kind of my favorite suit kind of going on, but there were other ones that I like. Of course I like the 68 suit, those, and Chris, you mentioned it, the double row teeth. That was a really cool addition to it, and you talked about the thunderous footfalls. The suit just goes through these different designs, and like it or not, it's always going to, Godzilla as a character is always going to have someone else molding him together and putting him together in some sort of fashion, and we invite that creativity in a lot of ways as fans, don't we?
Yeah, so one thing I can say to that, which I guess I was just oblivious to as a child, I knew his appearance was different from movie to movie, but I never thought about it. I talk with fans now at G-Fest, other places, and like, oh, I can tell that's stock footage from this movie, or oh, it came from there, or oh, he looked different, the neck was longer, it didn't have ears. I just saw him on screen, was happy he was there when I was a kid, so that didn't matter to me what he looked like. I just knew it was him, and I was fine. Going back now as an adult and watching movies over again, it sticks out to me more. But it never bothered me as a kid. I just saw him, and I thought he looked cool pretty much no matter how he looked. Even Son of Godzilla, I really could have cared less. Obviously, I could tell his eyes were buggy. He looked different there, but it was just, oh, there's Godzilla, and I was just in and right in the world, and I was going.
Yeah, and, you're right. As a kid, you're not bothered by that at all. It's just you're happy he's got his flame breath. He's big and menacing. He's got the scales and the dorsal fins. That makes Godzilla. But yeah, you're right. As we kind of get nitpicky, sort of as adults looking at that. But we can also appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into suitimation and all that. So kind of talking about back to Biollante. Let's talk about the Biollante character and design, how this all came about to create such a unique monster. Maybe start, George, talking about how unique Biollante is, and then Chris, just when he's done, follow up with your thoughts on the character Biollante.
I think it's interesting because the Godzilla films seem to be a product of their times, and bioengineering, science stuff was very much a part of the films in 84 and 85. Well, it's the same movie. And Biollante. One thing I will point out, going back briefly, in Godzilla 84, I never understood the theory about Godzilla having a brain like a bird and following the bird frequency. I always thought that was silly when I was a kid. And I remember going back and seeing Godzilla 54, where he roars at the giant bird cage as he's walking through Tokyo, and there's no reaction like it was on Godzilla 84. So I always laughed at that's just silliness.
Yeah. Jumping
Off really quickly, then Jurassic Park comes along, and it's mainstream. Yes, dinosaurs descended from birds. They have the same genetic makeup, and I go back, I'm like, wow, these guys were really on the forefront of this stuff, and I wasn't even paying attention to it. They were right there. So Biollante being created from human cells spliced with a plant was really something that is ahead of its time. I don't think anybody was really thinking of doing that. I guess maybe horror movies in the 80s and 90s did that, Reanimator or something along those lines. But just interesting that the scientist does that. Initially gets just the rose look. There's really no human quality to it. It's really just a plant. It's not until its final phase, after it's gone through a couple of changes, that there's any sort of a human characteristic to it. And that's really just the giant mouth. I wouldn't even say it's really got any human characteristics. It seems to be more just an excuse to say that it has Erica's spirit, which the doctor talks about. Mostly plant and monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
One thing I like about this is that this is really more almost of a movie that's kind of made by a fan that was submitted for this contest. That's partially how this movie was getting made. And to build off of George a little bit, it is almost very much a Frankenstein kind of concept of a monster. You have human aspect mixed with a plant aspect, which is nature, and then you have Godzilla, which is something beyond nature. And all those three elements combined together create something that's totally unique. I think both designs, both the flower and the final form of this monster, are really unique and very powerful in the film. I just wish that we had more of the monster in the actual film. I think at most we get maybe 4 or 5 minutes between both fights. And unfortunately, the monster is so weak that we don't really get to see its full strength and capability.
Yeah, it did kind of leave you wanting more, didn't it?
It did, unfortunately. But at the same time, what I got there was so impressive, I actually went back and watched the fight again, and wasn't too upset at it.
And you said you talked about the bioengineering guys and the whole idea of the plant cells, Erica's cells, and of course we've got Godzilla cells in there. And if you watch my review, I kind of poke fun about this. Chris, about the Frankenstein aspect. You can almost hear him saying, it's alive, with the thunder and lightning in the background. And, that's just the only thing that's missing from Dr. Shiragami when he's doing this playing God sort of thing like Dr. Frankenstein is doing. But, and I've always said, when you mix Godzilla cells with anything, you're just going to get something monstrous. But this was the first time, if you think about it, that people started looking into Godzilla's, makeup, his genetic makeup. Before that time, when the Showa series, I can't even think of a film that even cared about really anything of Godzilla's, biology, maybe with the exception of a little bit of 54, they talked about a little bit of his origins, perhaps could be this or perhaps could be that, but, it's very pseudoscience-y anyways. But they're picking up those Godzilla cells, and of course it's like every government, every organization wants a piece of Godzilla because of the bioengineering weaponry and what it could do, for their advantage. And Godzilla 2000, of course, they were looking at Godzilla cells again and kind of trying to, maybe scientifically justify why he's so big, so indestructible, so powerful, why he's able to use radiation as a beneficial, energy source and all this. So it is kind of interesting that this was kind of the first one, and it kind of ahead of its time. It's 1989 that they're doing this, and yeah, we've seen a lot of different, kind of those pseudoscience-y things enter into other genres and other sci-fi films and what have you. So, this film did have a lot of really good groundbreaking kind of ideas. And so, in a Biollante, of course, I even go back to Little Shop of Horrors and that whole idea of a killer plant with huge mouth and, and it's and it's just wanting to take over the world and all that, and it has those tentacles that reach out just like Audrey 2 in the Little Shop of Horrors. So there's I poked fun of that a little bit in that review as well. Check it out sometime. But the characters, let's talk about a little bit of them. There's a lot of characters actually in this film, and notwithstanding, of course, we've got Miki Sagusa with first appearance in that. So just briefly, Chris, then George, actually, if you would, just talk about some of the characters, any of them that stood out to you, what you kind of observed through the characters.
I think this is really almost, for the most part, these are characters that are kind of in this film. And then unfortunately, like about the Heisei series, they introduce to you so many characters that can be potentially built on and really have something more intriguing developed with them. But unfortunately, it's really never the case. Unfortunately, Megumi Odaka's character is the only one that we really see slowly start to evolve throughout the entire series. And it's unfortunate because I actually would like to see more with the Saradian agent. Is it Saradia? I don't remember the name of the country that.
Saradia, yeah, the Saudi Arabia kind of country, yeah, made up country,
right?
Yeah.
I would like to see more of him as well as the other characters in the movie, even the general that's directing most of the Japanese Defense Forces. I would love to see him in more of the Heisei series, but I think this is the only role he has in the franchise, right? I haven't seen him in anything else, unless I'm mistaken.
I believe you're right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that. He's only in this one, yeah.
Colonel Kuroki, yes, he's only in this version.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I agree with Chris. The Saradian agent was awesome. I liked Miki Sagusa's psychic. They were going all over the place with this. You had the bioweapons they were developing. They had the Japanese Defense Force, the typical just military weapons. They had the psychic clinic that she worked at with the kids. The kids were all drawing pictures of Godzilla and sensing his presence. There was a lot of various aspects they had all over the place that they threw into the film, and basically just threw everything against the wall to say, let's see what works, and then picked and choose what they wanted. And clearly the psychic strain ran through the rest of the series.
Yeah, that was an interesting twist on it, actually communicating with Godzilla, in some way. And it's like, how do you communicate with him? Let's use some psychics and and see what, and that scene that really sticks out. A lot of fans love that it's less than a scene. It's just a shot when they go in there and all the kids are drawing pictures of Godzilla and they all hold him up at the same time. And there's the If Kube music thundering in, and it's just like one of those things that everyone's like, all the fans are yes, just loving this shot, and it's it's just so perfect, actually. So yeah, there's a lot about this film that did break new ground and try some new things, which we like to see. That we like to see some new things, and unfortunately Biollante hasn't made any kind of other appearance since this film, and that's a real shame, actually, to see that. And you talked about some of the characters. They didn't make any other appearances with the exception of Mickey. And so, there was a lot that had going for it, but will say there is a ton of characters in this film, and it is a little tough to kind of keep up with, all the different storylines that are going on, all at the same time. And, so sometimes I think the whittling down the film to just to be a little less, sometimes less is more. But there's some cool aspects about that, especially like the Seradian agent. Everyone loves to see him, moving in and doing what he's doing. And then, of course, they like to see, how he how he gets offed at the end, which is just really spectacular. Yeah. So, so we talked about that. We talked about, here's a reappearance, of course, which is very cool, is to see the Super X come back. Now, well, I'll let you guys talk about it. I'll share my thoughts in a second. Go ahead, George.
I love Super X1, so I'll start. I really liked the Super X in Godzilla 84. So seeing Super X get a remodel and return to Super X2 was really cool. The fire mirror I thought was a great idea, reflecting Godzilla's heat ray back at him. Didn't quite know why it was going to reflect it back at 10 times the strength. I didn't get that concept, but it was just cool to see them do the reflecting. I didn't think the rockets would have much effect on him, which they didn't, because it was the cadmium missiles previously that really had an effect. But that was a really cool effect. And it's one of the movies where the Defense Forces really come up with really great ideas, and literally jumping off Super X just for a moment, with the missiles getting shot into Godzilla, he actually does not come back from the anti-nuclear energy bacteria, as we're learning in the next film. So it's really a series of maneuvers and missions by the Defense Force that actually does stop Godzilla, and they don't really get the credit for it like I think they should in this film, but they really did a good job.
That's right. Yeah.
I had to agree with a lot of what George just said. I mean, the Super X2, when you hear that theme kick in, you get pumped, you get excited. You feel like the humans can actually beat Godzilla for a few minutes until the fire mirror unfortunately starts to melt and then gets unfortunately knocked into the ocean. But, I mean, I think of the three Super X's that you see in the movies, this is probably my favorite of the three. And again, like George was saying, it really is almost like a game of chess. You see the humans counteracting what Godzilla can do, and how they can almost kind of try and one-up him, or at least stall him in his movement throughout the land of Japan. They start, of course, trying to keep him from getting on the land by attacking him in the ocean. Then when he lands in Osaka, they try and prevent his gradual movement through the land, and when that fails, they finally try to resort to one last assault with the Thunder landmine. I can't remember what the names are, but
Thunder Control System.
Thank you, Thunder Control System. And those actually started to work for a little bit, combined with the anti-nuclear energy bacteria, but for whatever reason, maybe plot armor, Godzilla just powers through it once more. It really is an awesome game of back and forth and Godzilla in this movie. And unfortunately, we don't really get to see that throughout the rest of the Heisei series.
Yeah, the weapons that are kind of developed in each individual movie are used in that movie, but then they never are used again, even if they had a a shred of effectiveness. It's kind of interesting, that they're never tried again. Do they think that maybe Godzilla is intelligent enough somehow to avoid that? I mean, I don't know. Of course, we are talking very pseudoscience-y stuff, the whole anti-nuclear energy bacteria, the reflecting mirror, and the Super X. I will say this, they had a great idea with this Super X. Don't put people in it. Remote control it. It's like
remote control.
Yeah, it's like if he blows that thing out of the air, which he's going to do, there's not going to be any casualties as a result because no one's in there. So yeah, it's just the guy on the remote control at home base, blasting away at Godzilla, and even if he needs to, send that into that, which they kind of do use that, Super X as kind of as a decoy, or not a decoy, I guess a kamikaze kind of mission. They've got to do something to divert Godzilla, and so they use that to their advantage. And so that is kind of a cool different effect that gets thrown in there when they do that. And of course, what do? They make Super X3 and Godzilla Destroyer, and then they put people back into it. So I don't know. It's like, are they learning as we go? And it is interesting to see Miki Sagusa grow through the Heisei series. That might be a discussion for another episode, actually, as we go through these kaiju discussion episodes. But she changes kind of in her profession and all that. And here she's a child in a sense, and she's learning her powers, communicating with Godzilla, and we're just starting to get a taste of how this is going to progress through the rest of the series. So I'm going to start with one more thing, and then we'll kind of close things up about the storyline. Anything you may have found kind of unique, odd, maybe it didn't work so well. I'm actually going to start with this one. I think the whole government that you talked about, Seradia, and making kind of a parallel with the Middle East and this nation, Saudi Arabia. They even have the oil tanker that they show in there. So, and they call it the Seradia Oil Company. So it's a nation that is got a lot of interest in making some money and a lot of international commerce. And of course, it's got an agent out there. He's trying to steal Godzilla cells. I thought that was kind of a cool little aspect about it. It kind of goes back to the the first Mothra film, when they had a made-up nation, and help me out, guys, with the name, Rolisica in Mothra. And that was supposed to be kind of a Russia-America country that is a made-up country. It doesn't exist, but it's just one of those things that they did so that they're not trying to say that this is blatantly America, Saudi Arabia, Russia, or anything like that. So they made up this nation, Seradia, and of course Shiragami has connections, with that nation too, and his daughter, and obviously there's kind of some turmoil. But I kind of like to see the Godzilla films do stuff with an international kind of appeal to it, not just kind of focused on just Japan. Of course, Godzilla's got to go to Japan to smash it up and destroy it and all, but that there's interest. There's a whole world out there is interested in what's happening here with Japan, and that kind of goes into Shin Godzilla, because there was a whole international effort there, to kind of figure out Godzilla, and maybe this nation can capitalize from it, and this nation over here wants to take control, and so this one was another film that kind of did that. 84 was kind of the same way too. They all, Russia and America had kind of interest in what was going on with this problem Japan has. So I'll kind of throw it your guys' way. Anything else about the story itself, the script, that kind of stood out to you?
To branch off what you just said, I think some of the Godzilla films are successful at not having Godzilla be the main plot of the story. And I know people will think that sounds weird, but he's in the universe. We know he's there, but he's not the driving factor. I like that he's been dealt with in Godzilla 84. He's buried in Mount Mahara, but all this battle over the Godzilla cells, Seradia, everybody trying to deal with getting that, and then they actually end up putting the country up for ransom, saying if you don't give us the cells, we will blow up Mount Mahara, releasing Godzilla. Now, how they know they're going to actually release them by doing that, I don't know, but it's just intriguing that there are human elements moving the story along, not just the monster elements. The monsters are a byproduct, and that's kind of the part of the point of the movie. It's pointed out. Dr. Shiragami points that out. Okochi Foundation owner talks about Shori's eggs is egg, somebody else is going to do it if we don't develop this bacteria. All of that stuff is showing that it's humans driving the story and creating these monsters and these byproducts, not the monsters driving the story. And I think when that's done well, the Gamera trilogy in the 90s, I thought, did it very well too. The monsters are there, but they're not always the driving force of the storyline. They're reacting to what's going on around them, and then we have to deal with it. And I think that sometimes works very well. Sometimes it doesn't. I can't think off the top of my head of some of the monster movies that have not done it well by not having the monsters be the main plot moving point. Like Godzilla 54, Godzilla's the main plot point of that movie. He's moving the story along. People are seeing what's happening because he's there. This movie actually just has him in the background. And some people don't like that he's not there on screen all the time, but I like the human drama because it's interesting with all the characters, as we said earlier, driving the story, and then the monsters are reacting to what's happening around them.
Yeah, good point.
You both cover a lot of the points I was going to mention. I think the only human plot in this movie I don't really feel fits is actually the romance point between the other female psychic. I don't know her name. Do you know, George? Not Mickey.
Asuka, or as I've heard from WWE now, Asuka.
Yes.
The actual proper pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
But for English stuff, it's Asuka.
I'm not sure if it's my faulty memory, but it doesn't seem like romances seem to do out very well in this Godzilla franchise. She doesn't seem to really get too far in this movie with the love interest. Terramech Godzilla doesn't work out very well.
So it actually doesn't end up work out for her.
I mean, I could be mistaken. I'm not sure.
Hiroshima doesn't leave, and he says that he's going to stay there in Japan. He was going to go study abroad and leave, but I was like, nah, I guess I'll stay here with you.
You are right, George. So it actually works out in this movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's in the next movie in like a brief scene. I feel like she pops up somewhere in a publicity still, or I've seen her again in one of the other films, but I could be wrong.
Okay. But yeah, you're saying maybe even just a lot of the times when they try to put romance into these films that it's not really something that drives it forward. Is that kind of what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get out. I just can't really word it, unfortunately.
Well, no, I follow you because I would agree with you with the romance story for Miki Sagusa in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I thought that was just kind of there just to be there. This one I think works a lot better than that one, but I agree with you. Sometimes they throw these plot points in and they don't really drive the story that much. But as I said before, they threw everything at the wall of this movie to see what would stick. They're like, we're giving everybody everything. Everything is out there. So if you find something you like, latch onto it and enjoy.
Yeah. And there's, you're right. This one kind of did a little bit of everything. It's got it all. And then the next film, King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, it's like, they had everything in that too that you could take from a sci-fi film, because we have, we have genetics, and we have time travel, and we've got a UFO, and we've got, just a lot of different kind of things that they could throw at this film. You have, technology versus biology kind of going in that, an android. I mean, anything else that they could throw at that next film, they were kind of doing that too. And so I think, in a lot of ways, Toho was trying, and sometimes successful, sometimes maybe not so much, but trying to see what would stick, and this film is no different, actually, in that way, and I think that's kind of why, in a lot of ways, that it's one of the fan favorites that's out there, because it did try something new, and Biollante is a very cool looking, a foe for Godzilla to fight, and it makes for a really cool, figure to, sit on a shelf, and, I don't have it, so I can't say that. It's, but one day maybe. But, it's it has a lot of really cool, unique things that were going on. So that's why I think, again, the fans kind of cling to this film. And so, here in a minute, guys, I'll give you guys the last word, but I want to thank you guys for your time, and I really hope to get you guys on another episode in the near future. We'll talk some kaiju films or figures or something out there. But for both Chris and George, I really appreciate your time and being a part of this, and definitely looking forward to having you on a new episode here in the near future, and seeing you guys at G-Fest. So with that, I'll give you guys the last word if you're ready.
George, you want to go first?
General, I hope you succeed. But no matter what happens, Godzilla will live.
Space Titanium means from outer space.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Love them both. Great lines, guys. Appreciate it a lot. And we will catch you guys later. And we will see you guys on another episode of the Monster Report. Thank you very much.